You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 24. Today, we are talking about failure. As entrepreneurs and business owners, it's something that we face on an almost daily basis. And as a society, we've been conditioned to think of it as bad. But there's a great opportunity with every failure to do something even better than before and grow your business to new heights. That's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
David, as I mentioned on another episode, I hired an image consultant, and she came over the other day.
I was making sure that I was out of the house when that happened.
I think you should have stayed in the house, because I could have sicked her on your clothing. She came in, and she just had all this authority. It was kind of cool. And she goes, look, we're going to take out in your closet what you don't need, what's not working for you. We're going to put it in bags, and I'm taking it with me when I go.
Yeah. Oh, that's why I had so much more room when I came back. It wasn't my clothes missing. It was yours.
And I swear to you, my closet has half a wardrobe in it right now because we haven't been shopping. So I literally think my wardrobe shrunk by 50%, which isn't saying a lot. I mean, that's because I didn't have a lot to start with. So now I have this tiny little wardrobe and like 3 pairs of shoes, and it's kind of sad.
So step 1, she comes in, clears out what you've got. Mm-hmm. And step 2, she builds something that was better than before.
Exactly.
That's not that much different than what you do with people's businesses.
That's very true. So we're in I'm going to call it phase 1, clearing out Laurel's closet. And you should have seen the look she gave some of my stuff. Some of it was from college. I think I had stuff from high school in there. And she's like, no.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like a Bon Jovi t-shirt or something.
Oh, no, that's my best friend. I don't have that.
Pearl Jam.
I don't have Pearl Jam.
9
Rage
Inch
Against
Nails.
the Machine.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any of that. Most of it was just stuff that was outdated or too bright and colorful and things like that. But it was like kind of awesome and kind of terrifying at the same time to let go of so much stuff at once, because I'm all about clearing stuff out. You know that. We are both minimalists, like get rid of the stuff. But usually I do it one piece at a time. My rule is that if I buy a shirt or buy an article of clothing, I get rid of an article of clothing. That generally works pretty well for me. But man, taking half of my wardrobe out and putting it in bags and then loading it in her car, it was scary. I can't lie to you on that.
Yeah, I think even being minimalist, being in this country, having income to spend money on whatever we need, basically, things still pile up.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if you're not wearing the stuff, if you get rid of it and let it go and let it be there for somebody else at Goodwill or wherever you take it to, you're just opening yourself up for new things. And that's kind of what I like to do.
Would you say that you had some wardrobe failures?
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. Seemed like a good segue to our topic today, which is failure.
I've probably had years of wardrobe failures at different points in my life. College might have been one of those.
Did you ever get some like leather pants or some red vinyl pants or something, think they're like super cool, then you wear them and you're like, ugh? I
had a leather tube top.
Oh, okay.
That I thought that snapped all the way up the front.
Yeah.
I thought that thing was awesome. I probably could have stood on a corner and fit in. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, that could have been another business venture for you. And for me too, if I'd known you.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But you think you're all cool and this stuff. It was like from that company called Rave or, whatever I'm doing in college. What about you? Have you had wardrobe failures?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was a musician.
What's a wardrobe failure for you? Did you buy leather pants?
I did have a wardrobe failure once. I was up in New York. I was at a music event called CMJ, which is College Music Journal. And I met these guys. They were from an industrial band and super cool. We went out to eat and I'm just hanging out. I didn't want to have any business with them, although I probably should have. They've been very successful since then. And they invited me to come to this show that they were having later that night. I was like, yeah, what the hell? Because everybody does showcases at these events. And I decided I was going to go. So I got there, and I was traveling. I don't know if I'd checked into my hotel or not, but I was wearing basically the stuff that I had worn from the conference that day, which happened to be a white T-shirt. Everybody there was in black. So that in itself was a wardrobe failure. I was standing out quite a bit. But where the real wardrobe malfunction happened was when they dimmed the lights, just cut the lights. Band's ready to come on stage, and the only lights going on were black lights. So in this sea of darkness, you can see me just like lit up like a sun in my white T-shirt, which looked blue.
It's an attention grabber.
Yeah, it wasn't the kind of attention I wanted. I was hanging out with a bunch of dudes, and they were real cool, right? And I used to have all sorts of stuff pierced up, but these are the kind of guys with face piercings, crazy manic panic hair. They had one dude I remember had his teeth filed like a vampire.
Oh.
He literally, they weren't caps. He literally filed them. Had, I guess, a dentist, if dentists will do that, to where they were like fangs. So these were hardcore guys, and I was there with a white T-shirt.
Wow. Well, that could be worse, except for the black lights.
Yeah.
It's kinda bad.
Oh yeah. I mean, the guys, it was funny. I caught up with them after the show. We all had a good laugh about it, and it makes for a good story. But yeah, some of the coolest people I've ever met on the road. And it's speaking of wardrobe, you can't really judge people by what they're wearing, although we do, and that's where your wardrobe consultant comes in.
Well, speaking of failure, that is our topic of today. But before we get into that, let's talk about who is sponsoring our show today, David.
Episode sponsor, yeah. We're here in the middle of our 30 days of red hot giveaways. Very exciting. We're giving away Amazon TVs, Kindles, Google Chromecast, all sorts of books and audio books. And our sponsor today, I love these guys, Chris Wilson and Stephen Worley. They have something called Unstuckable. It's a podcast, and it's at unstuckable.co. I like the concept of it. We all tend to get stuck, but I love the concept of being unstuckable. Like that can't happen to you. It's like you're Teflon. You just slip right out of these situations. And they've got some really great stories of reinvention, of people coming to a crossroads in their life where they've totally turned things around and gone on a different path and have had success with that second path. So it's unstuckable.co. If you're into podcasts, and because you're listening to Red Podcast, I'm going to assume that you are, definitely check those guys out. They're cool guys. And we'll be giving away some cool stuff later on in the show thanks to them.
And their podcast is 5 days a week, which is amazing because you get all this great content 5 days out of your week. And I first learned about them because Pat Flynn posted a screenshot from iTunes, and they were in it. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because the entrepreneurs who are unstuck, who are moving forward in their business, those are the ones that succeed. And Chris and Steven have so many great tips and ways to help you get unstuck in your life and do what it is you want to do.
Yeah, it's worth a listen, and it will certainly give you some perspective because everybody feels stuck at one time or another. And by listening to these stories, you're going to realize that maybe you're not as stuck as you think, and it could be your greatest opportunity. So check them out, unstuckable.co, or you could search for Unstuckable on iTunes, and they'll pop up as well. So let's talk about failure.
Failure is something that's always an interesting topic to me because I feel like, David, we've been conditioned in the society that we're in to think of failure as bad. If you fail a test, that's bad. If you don't make the goal at your soccer meet, that's bad. But as business owners, I really think it's important, and this is something I work with my clients on, that you reframe failure to be good. And that's what you have to do if you want to be successful in business over the long haul.
Thomas Edison, as inventor of the light bulb, it took him 10,000 tries to get that to where it would actually work. And he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I basically found 10,000 ways that wouldn't work. So that's a way to reframe it. I know in my business, in direct marketing, a lot of times we'll do mailers or we'll do television ads. We look at it just as testing. So I think a reframe is a great way to kind of change up what's happening and look at it in a different way that won't be so frustrating to you.
And I think there's a direct correlation between the amount of failures that you've had and the success that you're experiencing. If you don't get unstuck in your life and go and risk failure, you're never going to succeed. So failure, in my mind, actually leads to success.
Yeah, and it's important, too, because we are not judged based on our failure. We're judged based on our success. So with what you're saying and what we've talked about in this podcast, you want more success, have more failure.
I don't know. I think people judged you on your white T-shirt and the black light, David.
Well, it was a good story, but it's also one of those, let's call it a damaging admission, to use a marketing technique. And I think it just made me human. It's one of those things that I hooked up with those guys in Austin, Texas, maybe 6 months later. Everybody's going on this circuit, and they just happened to be in Austin at the same time I was there. Saw them on the street, actually. And I was like, hey, man, it totally remembered me. So sometimes what you think of as a failure might be what makes you memorable.
Do you have any other big failures you want to share about that are worse than wearing a white T-shirt? Anything in business that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, I had a business situation. I thought it was said and done, and it was a live event that I had put on, and it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be. We had bad weather conditions. It was here in Nashville. Had bad weather conditions throughout the Southeast that weekend. And because of that, a lot of people that were supposed to come up to Nashville were not able to make it in. It was at a hotel. We had blocks of hotel rooms booked. Of course, those were canceled. Those were not paid for by the people that had booked them, and I was on the line for that. So once the event was done, I remember I got a bill, and I think it was something like $24,000. And it could certainly be one of those things. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like the best bill to get really ever, unless it's something you actually wanted to buy and something that you could actually hold in your hand. You know? But it was like thin air. Like, hey, you owe us $24,000. Okay. You know, you could look at stuff like that as a failure. To me, I'm still here, right? Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of little things. I mean, it's hard to say, hey, what's your biggest failure? Because there have been so many of them. I've been in federal court on the receiving end of a lawsuit. I've had
a business lawsuit.
Yes.
Or personal? Okay.
No, yeah, business lawsuit.
All right.
And I have, I've had all sorts of situations like that. I mean, if you're in business long enough, you're going to have disagreements, and sometimes the disagreements end up in receiving a big bill that you need to pay. And sometimes those business disagreements have to be worked out by the attorneys. But what do you do? I mean, the only thing you can do is get up and keep going, keep moving forward, and don't do it the next time.
I agree. Something that happened for me, and this wasn't a huge failure in the scheme of things, but it feels like it at the time. Years ago, when I was a practicing health coach, I had paid for this audio course that talked all about telesummits. And a telesummit is basically a series of interviews where you get all the people that you're interviewing to mail out about this one event. It's kind of like a series of teleclasses, but it's an event. And I decided this would be perfect for my business. And I picked a topic and got a lot of great experts on board, but for whatever reason, whether I didn't execute it very well or it didn't go very well or these people didn't mail out, I had very few people sign up for this telesummit. It was a live telesummit, and then I was sending people the recording. So I get on the first live call, and you can see in the software I was using who calls in to listen to the interview. And I'm pretty sure maybe like 2 or 3 people called in, and I'm having to pretend to the guests that I'm interviewing that people are on the call and listening and it's engaging to people, and literally there's 2 people on the call. So that felt like a really painful failure at that point. But at the same time, David, it's like, well, you just move